Fellas, there is a big problem with the Ryzeal deck, and I don't think we have yet to solve it. And I don't think it's time for us to wait for Konami to solve it with new cards from Supreme Darkness or from Maze of the Master. I think it's time we solve this problem now. And I think the way that we can solve the consistency issue, which is major and not really well talked about, is by supplementing an engine, not just through Fiendsmith, but anything low to the ground, repeatable, and powerful. And I think the candidate for the next couple of months is the Runick engine. Now, while the Fiendsmith engine can be produced using any two monsters realistically, and the Cash Tier engine cards are quite powerful and can generate the entire duo drive by themselves while also setting up other opportunities for negates and punishments in the form of Unicorn and Fenrir. The Runick engine is unique in that you play 16 different instant fusions. Now, instant fusions that can either give you access to a protection from Ghost Ogre, access to your other Runick engine pieces in the form of Fountain, or a level 4 which also becomes its own pseudo removal in Gary. And I'll show you why I think this is a worthy contender for the format and not just the Fiendsmith engine. Now, you could fit the Fiendsmith engine in this deck. I have some board breakers here which do not necessarily need to be here. This could easily be 8 Fiendsmith cards, and you can cut down some of the extra deck that seems a bit superfluous. But let's cover off the very basic idea of playing Runick with the Ryzeal cards and some interactions that may come up for you. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Ryzeal cards, I will explain them very briefly and why those effects are important and how they interact with your Runick cards. Firstly, Ice Ryzeal. All of the summoning conditions from the hand do lock you to rank 4 exceed monsters from the extra deck. Very important to know that. So before you are summoning any of these cards from your hand, you need to have resolved any Runick summon effect. The Runicks must happen first. Very important thing. It is a little restrictive in that sense, but I think it more than makes up for the drawback in terms of what utility it has. Now, Ice summons the level 4 Ryzeal summons Ryzeal from the deck on normal summon. Can special summon itself from the hand by pitching a card. That can come up, and there are a lot of free discards with the Runick cards that can make that useful. But the idea, at a very basic overview, is normal summon Ice, let it get hand trapped because it is the most powerful Ryzeal in the deck, in my opinion. Then, if it is stopped, you can play a Runick spell to generate a level 4 in terms of Gary, overlay into Detonator, and then continue doing your combo without having to expend another Ryzeal slot. Sword, obviously the second best normal summon. You're not ideally normal summoning this card, but it is suitable if you have to. Just add Ice or add Ext if you really need. And again, summoning is if you have a Ryzeal for free, again locking you to 4s. I'll try my best to stop explaining that part. But again, Sword, you're hoping that this gets negated, you can just turn this in a Runick into a duo. Some people opt to play 2. I don't understand this. The point of this is to solve consistency, not reduce it. Next, more important going second, because obviously we can dump the aggregator. Going first, just dump aggregator, attach it to a detonator if you're making it. The only conflict that you may potentially see with Ext is that to resolve its on-summon effect, you must only control face-up monsters that are either level or rank 4. Gary does not interrupt that condition because it is still a level 4 even if it is a fusion monster. And the fact that it summons itself for free is kind of nice. Node. Now, there is an argument for more than one node. We're probably never going to get to that point. I think the deck is plenty consistent the way I have built. However, you will find yourselves in lots of positions where you can send a superfluous fountain that you've already resolved this turn, because Gary can add it back, when you're just going to put down another, a Ryzeal cross. I'm presuming that the majority of your games are going to be played without you ever resolving a duo drive. So not seeing cross, not seeing plug-in, not seeing hole thruster. And if you don't, I think this deck is, playing detonator control with some Runick cards is a pretty valid way to go about it. But again, Node pitching some cards you're not using to restand, or summon back a Ryzeal, I think is a great effect. Considering playing more than one, but we're trying not to make our deck worse. In terms of searchables, just cross and a plasma hole. Again, we're only trying to play a really low to the ground version of this deck, so I don't need plugin to go and revive a level 4, because we're only assuming that we're never resolving duo drive. Like, any competent player, any competent opponent is going to just stop you from resolving duo drive, Imperm, Ash, Ghost Ogre, Vela, whatever. So I'm not banking on getting to these cards, but if I do draw them, they need to be good. Cross can be a negation on your Exceed monsters by itself, can avoid a negation on your Exceed monsters by itself. And Plasma Hole has a few unique interactions that while... Sorry, got interrupted there. Plasma Hole has a few unique interactions. Now, most of you probably don't know, but the effect to Exceed Summon during either player's turn as a quick effect only requires you use at least one Ryzeal monster as a material. It doesn't require all of the materials to be Ryzeal monsters. So there are situations where you may only control Ryzeal Exceed monsters, or maybe just a Ryzeal level 4. You can force your opponent to presume you're going to make a Typhon when you activate this card in the graveyard, and then chain a Runick to summon a level 4, and then use that to overlay for a card like Bagriska or Exciton Knight. Plus, this is fringe benefit in terms of that it can used to be out. Can be used to out stuff like Chaos Angel. I would prefer a version of this deck that sets the Plasma Hole as an interruption rather than only using the Exceed effect. Again, we're not playing plug-in because we're not expecting the duo drive to be resolving once, let alone twice. Consistency cards, just Bonfire. No Desires, no Prosperity in this deck. The Runick engine takes up plenty. There is probably space for it if I wanted to fit it in. But for now, we'll play through Bonfire, and if we have troubles, I'll just add some Desires to the list. Now, the Runick. This is going to be fairly straightforward for those of you who have seen these cards. 2 Fountain, again, searchable through tip and pretty much every, any other Runick spell. You could get away with playing 1, however, I think there's a lot to be gained from playing multiples, in the fact that you can replace one over the other, return the other one with Gary. The main issue with Master Dual Runick right now is that only having one means you can't recur one with Gary often. Like it's very rarely getting removed by being sent to the graveyard. So being able to place another fountain over a fountain, or cross over a fountain, and then retrieving a fountain with Gary is very important, I believe. 3 tip. Very self-explanatory. You need to be playing 3 Slumber. 3 Slumber is actually sort of somewhat interesting in a format where a lot of people are playing Ghost Ogre, because if you do go for duo drive, you can prevent your duo drive from being destroyed with Slumber, which might force out another hand trap like Imperm or Vela. Freezing Curses, just a general negation. In the mirror, the application for this card is you just get to negate your opponent's duo drive without having to use a monster effect that would interact with cross. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Quick play negations, very important in this format, I believe. With the absence of Imperm in this deck, Freezing Curses is just essentially holding Imperm for your opponents for your turn after your opponent's already done their combo. Flashing Fire, who doesn't like a bit of in-engine removal? I think a lot of decks lack the in-engine removal without having to go with your extra deck. I like being able to search and use this pretty much whenever I want. Again, all of these serve as potential interrupts for destruction through access to Hugin. Destruction, you can blow up your opponent's cross. which is really important for the grind game. I'd rather have my cross resolve more times than my opponent does. And Dispelling. Now, this is just for consistency. I don't think this card's really worth playing otherwise. But there are some situations where you could, rip a card out of your opponent's hand if they search. Particularly if you're getting full rost and you just need to resolve a Runick card, you can Dispelling it. Decide. In the last 8 slots, again, it's a 40 card deck. Again, we want to be consistent because the Runick cards all act as sort of pseudo board breakers. I figure it's better just to keep going on with that trend. If you are going to only have 8 non-engine slots in your deck, they probably aren't worth being hand traps because you're just not going to draw them enough of the time. So 2 Droplet, 2 Eclipse, 3 Evenly. This deck historically doesn't need its battle phase, so you might as well use your first one to clear your opponent's board. It will force your opponent to either Detonator something away themselves that they don't want to have banished, but the standard Ryzeal end boards with like all the Fiendsmith cards can play a little bit unevenly. The fact that Lacrima and Requiem can recur themselves from graveyard on your turn is a bit irritating, but I think Evenly Match clears up a majority of the format warping threats that are around. I don't think this card works by itself, so it does need to be paired with one of your other Runicks. Even a card like Slumber can summon Gary and try and pop a card before you go evenly matched. Eclipse, lots of Exceed monsters in the format. Didn't think too hard about this. It's either going to be 3 and like a skill drain, or 2 Eclipse, 2 Droplet. And Droplet is just good, generically good generically good negation, particularly when you've activated multiple Runick spells, which doesn't really happen in the hand trap versions of these decks, because you can just Droplet, send all the Runick spells you've activated. For example, hell, you could even go activate Evenly, response, no, cool, chain Droplet to like, if they have like a Varudris or something on the field. Can't think of any other hard negates in this format. But you could, in theory, go to battle phase and activate your Flashing Fire to pop, Slumber to summon, and then activate Droplet, sending these 2, which cost you really nothing to negate the board and pop when you need to. So this is definitely more of a board breaker style approach. Cards of which will get sided out in games 2 and 3 depending on the orientation. Just the extra from now on, 2 Detonator. This could be 3, but once you've summoned 2 Detonators, you're probably already winning that game. Again, the point of this deck is to play Detonator control, get your Duo Drive negated, push through to a Detonator, and sit on that with Runick spells, which seems kind of impossible for your opponent to clear. Duo Drive. The point of this card is to be negated. It doesn't really do anything else. Resolving this card usually means winning the game, unless of course you're playing against me, where my deck is all board breakers and hate for going second. Aggregator, just 1. I don't think it's worth playing another one when the extra deck is so tight. 2 is fine, but you can dump like anything else with extra Ryzeal. Runicks, 2 Hugin, 2 Gary. There's probably a world where we can also play Emerald to recur some of these. Hugin, might not even be worth playing at 2, because once it gets negated, you're turning this and a level 4 into SP to avoid other negations on your cards. So might only ever be worth playing 1. Having this negated feels really bad because it's the only one that actually costs you a card. And then just utility, Dugares, Bagruska, Exciton. I think these are pretty self-explanatory. Draw more cards. Again, if you can't get to Detonator and you think your Duo Drive is going to be negated, you can just plant a Bagruska and then prevent it from being destroyed with Slumber. And Zeus and Crisis. You might think that Zeus is a really weird pick, given this deck is never going to see access to its battle phase for the first 9 to 10 turns of the game. But what's important is that you can you can Hull Thruster into this card. If your opponent has gone battle phase and attacked one of your Exceed monsters or use one of their Exceed monsters to attack, you can overlease on top of a Bagruska, for example, or like a Dugares, or just something that you can detach off of, which can punish your opponent on there in their main phase 2 when they try and rebuild the board. And one of the best cards of the deck, given we're not going to be using our battle phase a whole lot, we don't really need to clear our board a whole lot, is SP. The other card in this slot could be Beat. So Donna could be Donna. I don't particularly like Donna. I think it has far fewer applications. Removing any card is really important. But that is the deck. I think this is definitely something that's got a lot of merit. Even if you're just looking at practice hands, you think about in what order you can activate your effects. Runick cards typically come first, unless your normal summons get negated. The thing that people don't think about is, well, you've got now 16 cards summoned from the extra deck. Does that not make it worse to Furos? In fact, it does not, because all of the quick play spells can be chained to Furos to prevent your opponent from getting any additional draws. Even sample hands, quickly shuffle up, such as this. 2-sword Ryzeal and non-engine would be conventionally a pretty bad hand, but including the board breakers and some engine to recur can be really important. Anyway, that's enough from me. If you've paid attention, thank you for paying attention. If you haven't paid attention, go to sleep, and I will see you with a tournament report hopefully in the next week or so. Thanks, guys.